Hello, beautiful people, and welcome, to Ask Zajef Cyno Edition. Now, I don't know, you might be able to tell from my voice, but I'm disgustingly sick right now. Ideally, I wouldn't record today. I'd still rest up, but the Cyno banner is approaching, and I do want to get this out as early as possible. So for you, this is for you, by the way. So keep that in mind. But I hope you can excuse the probably less than ideal enthusiasm and energy. Thanks to Shuffle for compiling the questions for us. Say thank you in the comments. Yeah, first things first. His overall place in the meta, pull value, especially relative to the other on-field carries like Alhaitham, and how much did he gain from the release of Nahida in 3.2? Let's start with the last question. Here's the thing about Cyno. Cyno's burst has a pretty long duration, but more importantly, if you swap out, his burst ends. And without his burst, he's useless. Meaning that Cyno is a unit that is kind of restricted when it comes to rotations, in the sense that once you swap into him, you can't really swap out. And if you swap out, then you're usually hurting your damage. The problem with that can be, if you're fighting multiple waves of enemies, and you're using someone like Nahida, you'll kill the first wave after like 3 seconds in your ult, and then the second wave doesn't have Nahida's E on them. So you're just like, oh, okay, well I guess I swap out to Nahida. And then Cyno's burst is still in a 15-second cooldown, and you're just sitting there staring at them. Is Nahida the best option when it comes to the actual DPS for Cyno's teams? Yeah, she is. Does she always feel good to play? No. There's definitely chambers and situations where playing Nahida will just make things feel worse than if you were playing someone like DMC. So while Nahida did increase his power a little bit, honestly, if you don't have her and if you're not using her, there are a lot of situations where you're not missing out on much. Now let's move on to his overall place in the meta and pull value. In order to address how good Cyno is, we have to talk about Keqing. Before Dendro, Keqing was a joke. You could play her in Taser teams as like an on-fielder with Kazuha, Xingqiu, Fischl or some shit. And like, it worked, but you weren't doing yourself a favor. With the release of Dendro, Keqing's pretty fast electro application went from being basically useless because you don't really need to keep electro as an aura for any kind of reactions, to actually being pretty useful because Quicken, right, with Aggravate, you don't need to maintain another element as an aura, so having fast application just means more reactions and more damage. Keqing's place in the meta went up a lot. And the reason why that's relevant is because a lot of the teams where you can play Cyno, you could be playing Keqing instead, and as a standard 5-star, Keqing is a character that a lot of players are just gonna have, even if they didn't intentionally go for her. You have to make the conscious decision to go for Cyno, but you don't have to make the conscious decision to go for Keqing. It's very possible that you have an unleveled Keqing lying around. It's also possible that you don't, but the fact that a lot of players are going to have one means that it merits discussion. When it comes to Aggravate teams, honestly, Keqing is better than Cyno. Cyno doesn't cheat like very far behind, but Cyno's potential gameplay issues with his lack of flexibility in rotations and just like kind of being stuck on him because of the way that his burst works, on top of just being a lot more vulnerable because you can't really quick swap, it means that in practice, even if in theory the difference isn't that big, in practice, Keqing just performs a lot better than Cyno does. Now that leads us into the other Cyno teams that you can play. And most people who really like Cyno and want to make him work, play him in Hyperbloom or Quickbloom teams. I think there's a little bit of a misconception about those teams, because it's not that Cyno's great in Quickbloom, it's that Hyperbloom's just broken, so it's enough to carry Cyno's ass. The main upside that those teams have is when you're on-fielding an electro unit, you're basically guaranteeing that any seeds that you generate will be hyperbloomed, and you're probably not going to meet the 2-seed limit all that often. And you're also guaranteeing that your on-fielder gets access to on-field EM buffs like Nahida's burst. What you're paying for it is, well, you have to on-field the electro unit, and you can't play an on-field hydro or on-field dendro unit to increase the amount of seeds that you generate, or just have high base damage or stuff like that. As a general rule, Hyperbloom teams just perform better with Kuki or Raiden as the electro trigger as off-fielders than they do with Cyno as the electro trigger as an on-fielder. There's good and there's bad with this, right? The good is that, well, sure, he doesn't perform necessarily quite as well, but like it's still a good team, right? Like it still clears content without much of a problem because Hyperbloom is kind of broken. But the bad is that if you play him in Quicken teams, he's just a worse version of Keqing. And if you play him in Hyperbloom or Quickbloom teams, he's just a worse version of Kuki. Both of which being units that are somewhat accessible to a lot of players. But yeah, so all in all, when it comes to like pull value, Cyno is one of the characters that has the lowest. Because he's just outshined by other characters that do what he does but better, without as many requirements. But when it comes to place in the meta and like strength, he's actually pretty strong. Because as it turns out, characters that work well with Hyperbloom are kind of broken. But yeah, so he's a very good example of a unit that is high strength, low pull value. He's good, but skippable. If you don't like him, just don't go for him. But if you do like him, you'll be able to make him work without a problem. My favorite state for a unit to be in. Because it means that people that don't like him don't have to feel pressured to play him. And people that do like him get to play him as much as they want, and they won't struggle in any content. Another one of Cyno's like kind of potential issues is that because he has a relatively high burst cost, right, with 80, and while his energy generation is okay, it's nothing crazy, most people will end up playing him in double electro teams, at which point you already have an electro unit to trigger your Hyperbloom, right? If you play him with Kuki, which a lot of people do, he's doing even less. Because it's not like you need him for the seeds anymore. The seeds are gonna get hyperbloomed anyways. And so at that point, having a unit that generates more seeds and also just does personal damage like Alhaitham, right, like the question is asking, would generally just perform a lot better. How valuable is he as a pull compared to the other 3.5 5 stars? So who do we have? We have Sorry, I'm sorry. I didn't mean it. Okay, listen. I'm sick, okay? It's not my fault. Alright, it's more difficult for me to contain. So we have Dehya, we have Ayaka, and we have Shenhe. Well, he's quite a bit better than Dehya. When it comes to Ayaka, it's kind of hard to say. Hoyo has been on a crusade to make Freeze feel like shit, and they've been like giving garbage abysses for Freeze for a while, and that's just made Ayaka feel pretty shit very often. And as long as they keep doing that, Ayaka's value is just not that high. I'd say that if you're planning on only going for Ayaka and then not going for Kazuha or Shenhe or any of the other stuff that makes the Ayaka teams better, like as a standalone, I'd probably rather have Cyno. I have Ayaka on my free-to-play. My Ayaka, who is top 1% in Agaja's system, is not able to clear Abyss 36 star in time. Because I don't have any of the stuff that's supposed to go with Ayaka. I don't have Kazuha, I don't have Shenhe, I don't have I have Kokomi, but like, ugh, I don't have Mona. Now, does it have something to do with the fact that she's talent level 110? Maybe, perhaps. A tiny bit, okay? No, but my top 1% Ayaka's burst is like, I need more than 3 of them to kill the Kenkis. Point being, when you're in content that's made to fuck with Freeze, Ayaka doesn't feel that good. And as hilarious as it is, Cyno doesn't really have content that he can't work through. Like, yeah, he's gonna feel like shit against very aggressive enemies, but you can get through it. I'd say like on my main account, I would rather have Ayaka. On my free-to-play account, I would rather have Cyno. It's kind of up to you, it doesn't really matter. Can you elaborate more on why you think that Keqing's a superior Aggravate driver compared to him, and how does he compare with the other Electros as an Aggravate driver? I mean, sure, she's just better. It's like about as much damage, but you can actually swap out of Keqing, and you spend a lot more time in iframes, and your supports are doing more damage. But also, if you're gonna pull for a limited 5-star as an Aggravate driver, there are some that are actually upgrades, like Yaimiko, and you're just so much better going for Yaimiko than going for Cyno if you're only looking for an Aggravate driver. You can also use Raiden, who has her own share of pros and cons, with the main con being that she has teams that are better than Aggravate, but she does work in Aggravate as well. What are the strengths and weaknesses of his kit? What do you think Cyno needs to be better? Do you think his current state is already close to his maximum potential? Okay, so here's the thing that can make on-field Electro worth it. I want you to pay attention to the seeds, right? We're getting 4 Hyperblooms at once. Ooh, 3 Hyperblooms there. Oh, another 3 there. Another, ooh. Oh, another 3. Right? We're meeting seed ICD pretty often here. That's a problem. And so if we had faster electro hits, like with an on-field electro unit, we'd be getting more damage because we wouldn't be meeting the seed ICD of you can only deal Hyperbloom damage, well, kinda generally, up to 2 times every 0.5 seconds. The thing is, in order to have Dendro and Hydro application fast enough that you get this many seeds, you kind of need to be on-fielding a Dendro unit or a Hydro unit. Otherwise, you just don't have enough. Which means that you don't get to on-field Cyno. Because if you are on-fielding Cyno, then you're not generating as many seeds, and then you're not actually getting the value of on-fielding your Electro unit anymore. In other words, what we would need is a Dendro character whose Dendro application is just so much faster than Nahida that it actually justifies playing an off-field or an on-field Electro applier for Hyperbloom. Or a bunch more shit that gives EM buffs but only to the active character. And Nahida's not enough. So like 250 EM, not enough of a buff to justify it. Basically, you need massive Nahida power creep for Cyno to actually be the kind of unit that is actually an upgrade over others. And I just don't see that happening. There are a lot of things that can make him feel better to use. Adding Dendro Shielders, but I don't expect it to make him better unless they actually are like a really, really good. Anyways, I don't think he should become better though. I think he's in a pretty good spot. And as to what the strengths and weaknesses of his kit are, I'd say that he doesn't really have any like major strengths or major weaknesses other than the field time requirements. Is it generally worth leveling him to 90? Yeah. In most teams where you play him, you're either playing him with Quicken, or like with as an Aggravate unit, or as a Hyperbloom trigger, both of which scale very well with base levels, so leveling him to 90 is pretty worth it, yeah. Is his strong suit more single target or AoE? It's more single target. His AoE kind of sucks. Like, it's there and all, but his normal attacks, AoE, like, area, like, size is kind of shit. So he doesn't actually feel that good in AoE most of the time. And then on top of that, if you play him with Quickbloom or just straight up Hyperbloom, generally a lot of that is also more single target focused with units like Xingqiu or Yelan. Does he have any sort of combo that's optimal to follow? Yes and no. So honestly, I haven't kept up with his like combo stuff since release. But I usually play him with TF when I play him, which kind of changes the combos a little bit. I mean, I guess we can start with no TF. I think that what people usually do is like E, Q, 1, 2, 3, E, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, E, 5, 1, 2, E, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, E. Had to dodge there, so it kind of messed with the perfect combo. But generally, it's N5 into N2 and then E. Like I said, though, I like playing him on TF. So you want to do 1, 2, E, 1, 2, 3, 4, E, 1, 2, 3, 4, E, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, E, 1, 2, 3, 4, E, 1, 2, 3, 4, E, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5E. But yeah, so you do N2, N4, N4E, N5E, N4, N4E, N5E. That's generally the combos that people go for. I don't know shit about the C1 combos, right? Because C1 gives a bit of attack speed, so it changes exactly how many you get. I'm sorry, I haven't looked into them. I'm sure you can find them somewhere, though. One of the main things, though, is that in a lot of Cyno teams, you don't actually play a shielder, or like you don't want to have to play a shielder, which means that doing your combos perfectly won't always be possible, and learning to just sometimes know when you have to just give up on your hit and just dodge can be very useful. How much interruption resistance does he have? So the way that interruption resistance works is like it actually has like a value, and when you have multiple sources, they just get added together. Cyno offers little enough resistance interruption that most things will still stagger him, but it's enough that when it's paired with another form of resistance or interruption, like something like Xingqiu, both of them together is basically enough to resist almost every kind of interruption. Artifact set overview, TF versus Glad versus Gilded, 2vs options. Are there any unconventional builds for him? Okay, I'm a TF simp. I'll play TF till the day I die, but you don't have to go for him for TF. If you play him in Aggravate, generally TF is better. If you play him in Hyperbloom, it kind of starts becoming, or Quickbloom or whatever, kind of starts becoming weird where TF gives you more energy because you E more. but the effect, or the 40% Hyperbloom damage, is a lot less than you gain from like the 4-piece Gilded set. So generally people go for a 4-piece Gilded instead, especially because most of the time you don't actually build triple EM main stats, because he still has a decent amount of talent damage. So you go like EM Electro Crit generally, but like not really, but like kind of, it's weird. The like breakpoints for his stuff are weird and cringe and depend on weapons, and I hate it. Point being, sometimes you're not going full EM, in which case the higher EM from Gilded matters. Like it's a bigger increase than it would otherwise be. But yeah, all in all, generally I'd either go TF or Gilded. TF for Aggravate and Gilded for the Hyperbloom or Quickbloom. Glad is fine if you don't have a good TF, like it also works. 2-piece, meh. I'd try to stick to a 4-piece if you can. Are there any unconventional builds? I mean, not really. Like, I mean, I guess you can put them on flop if you want, but meh. Attack or EM Sends and is ER a preferable main stat on him? Almost always EM Sends. There's a few weapons where in Aggravate, attack sends are slightly better. For example, the Jade Wing Spear, which is generally the weapon I use on him. Attack percent sends is ever so slightly better if you're using like pure Aggravate. But generally attack sends isn't too far behind. Is ER preferable main stat? If you play him solo Electro, it's going to be really hard to meet his ER requirements, so you might need ER sends. But generally it's not what you want to go for. When I play him in the Overworld, I almost always give him an ER sends because otherwise he feels like shit. Does his main stat preference change whether he's an Aggravate or Quickbloom? Yes and no. You gain a little bit more value from going full EM, but you don't necessarily want to. And like the breakpoints are a pain in the ass to calc. Both are viable basically. Just the usual build and just full EM like are both viable in Quickbloom. Whereas an Aggravate is just the usual build. How much ER does he generally want? It heavily depends. If you're getting Electro Resonance with an Electro unit that generates a lot of energy like Fischl, his ER requirements are going to be really low, especially if you're using TF. But if you're playing him solo Electro, or you're playing him not with TF and with a unit like Keqing at C0 that doesn't generate a lot of energy, right? So if we go with Keqing, TF with Fischl, I guess Electro Resonance does a lot of heavy lifting, but if you start going solo Electro, you'll see that then ER requirements start being a little tiny bit higher. All in all, when you play him with another Electro unit, generally you'll be fine. If you play him solo Electro, his ER requirements will shoot so high up. Is an EM Goblet or Circlet viable on him, and what is the general breakpoint for EM on him before its returns start to diminish? Yes and no. Again, if you're playing Quickbloom or Hyperbloom, then EM has a little bit more value, but it's generally not really better. And it's not a question of reaching a certain breakpoint. It's just the more stats you have, the better. Is full EM a thing on him? Yeah, I mean, you can do full EM. More so if you're going like solo Electro Hyperbloom. You're also going to need a bunch of ER if you do that, but like it's doable. You can do it with like Keqing Cross Spear or something. It works. Weapon overview. How do his 4 and 5-star options stack against each other? Which spear is best for free-to-plays, and is Missive Wind Spear good on him? His best weapon is basically always a signature. Generally, when it comes to Aggravate and like Quickbloom stuff, the next best stuff is going to be the other good 5-stars, and then you'll get the good free-to-play options like White Tassel. If you're playing him in a more Hyperbloom focused stuff, like as solo Electro, then Keqing basically fixing your ER requirements and giving you some EM makes it actually almost as good as his signature. And Fav can actually also be pretty good. Missive Wind Spear is okay, but generally White Tassel is just better, so there's not much of a point to leveling it if you already have a White Tassel. But because White Tassel is chest only, meaning that if you've already explored Dehya and you already fed them for weapon XP, you can't really get it back. Missive Wind Spear isn't too far behind, so you can use it instead. It's not much of a problem. Constellation Overview. How is his Constellation quality across the board? How much is of a DPS increase is his C2 as opposed to Nahida's C2, and how good is his C6? Honestly, I didn't look into Cyno's high cons too much. His C1 is kind of a bait. Like, it's okay, but in a lot of teams it doesn't actually do much, or even anything. His C2 is pretty good, right? It gives him basically 50% electro damage. It's generally not as good for team DPS as Nahida's C2 if you're playing him with Nahida. So Cyno's best con is Nahida's C2. C3 is burst, right? I mean, it's meh. C4 is meh. C5 is meh, not very good. C6 is like, I mean, it's good, like it's a C6. Compared to the other C6s, it's kind of just like, yeah. Right, like he effectively gets more damage. He gets the Duststalker bolts on his normal attacks, which is more electro application and more damage. It's alright, but yeah. Cyno C2 or R1 Scarlet Sands, Nahida C2. How many E's per rotation can he generally manage? It depends on whether you're going TF or not. If you're going TF, generally you can get E and burst, and 2E, and 2E, or in 4E. So that's 7 E's in burst plus 1 E out of burst. If you go for 4 I's with TF. Without TF, if you go for 4 I's, it'll be 5 E's in burst and 1 out of burst. Team overview, which archetype can he generally slot well in? How good exactly is his Quickbloom team relative to his Aggravate team? And does he have any weird unconventional comps worth a try? Let's start with the last one. He kind of doesn't. He's kind of like, he's an Electro-on fielder. There's nothing that's particularly weird or unconventional that you can do with that. He can slot well in Aggravate and Hyperbloom. His Quickbloom team is generally better than his Aggravate team at lower investment, and the higher investment you go, the more it starts being comparable because Hyperbloom is broken at low investment. How does his Quickbloom team square up against the best iteration of regular Hyperbloom teams? They're not as good. That's that. Speaking of Quickbloom, would Xingqiu or Yelan be the better Hydro for Cyno there? And is this affected by whether or not the Dendro is Dendro MC or Nahida? Okay, so let's talk about Quickbloom. Something that I see only really about Cyno, which I kind of understand why, right? Like, because Cyno mains had to like reconcile the fact that people were saying that their character wasn't very valuable, but they were still able to clear shit without much of a problem. They had to like come up with a reason for that wasn't just a character can be good and not all that valuable anyways. And so what followed was the Quickbloom cope, which okay, listen, Quickbloom isn't better than Hyperbloom. If you're keeping quicken up time so that you Quickbloom, it means you're not getting as many seeds. You're not blooming as often, so you're getting less Hyperbloom damage. In most situations, that's actually generally less good because Hyperbloom is broken. The thing about Cyno is because he kind of needs a battery, like he really wants to be played with another Electro unit, then you kind of can't play him with 2 sources of Hydro App to get a ton of seeds, which means that a lot of the time you're going to play him in Quickbloom teams where you don't get that much Hydro App. And they're good, but stop thinking that like, oh no, I have to stay Quickbloom. I can't get more Hydro application. I can't activate Yelan's Constellation 2. I can't activate Xingqiu's Constellation 6 because it will ruin my Quickbloom team. No, it won't. It'll make it better. Stop coping. So, would Xingqiu or Yelan be the better Hydro for Cyno there? Xingqiu is always the better Hydro, okay? Stop lying to yourself. Stop lying to yourself. Building on the last question, with the likes of Kokomi or even Ayato work there? Work, yes, be good, not very. I generally wouldn't recommend it. I don't like Kokomi at all because her uptime is kind of shit, and she doesn't even, like, she removes a little bit of quicken uptime. I'd say at that point, just use Barbara. And they work, and they're like a way to use a unit that isn't Xingqiu, right? Like that's the biggest upside. It's not it makes the team better, it's you get to use Xingqiu on the other side. That's the upside. That's the real thing you're gaining. And that's valuable, so like it can be something that you might want to do, but it's not something you should actively be looking for. Does he have a team at all where he's the best in his slot over anyone else? No. Does Beidou or Fischl have better synergy with him in general? Beidou has better synergy with him in general. Fischl is a better baseline unit, so depending on the situation, either can be better. And how much ER Beidou does Beidou need? Again, it depends a lot on the comp. Let's say you get a perfect parry on Beidou, but that's the only E1s per rotation. You're playing TF Cyno, and you're doing Nahida Zhongli. Alright, so you need around 150, but again, right, you add another E on Beidou, that's also a perfect parry, bam, it's at 120. Miss your perfect parry, oh no, it's at 170. It varies a lot. Is Cyno or Alhaitham generally better as a Quickbloom driver? Alhaitham. How much of a DPS loss is swapping out of his burst early? I mean, it depends, right? If you swap out of your burst so early that the next time you want to use his burst it's still on cooldown, then it's a pretty big DPS loss. If you're swapping out of your burst early to recast your support abilities, and then by the time you swap back to Cyno, it's off cooldown, then it's not really a DPS loss. It depends on the situation and the rotation. Generally, you do want to swap out early. You don't wait until your burst expires. matters. It's just a question of not swapping like way early. How does Yaoao compare to DMC in a Cyno comp? If you're playing Quickbloom, Yaoao's not very good because her Dendro application doesn't last that long, which means that you'll just lose your Dendro. You'll remove it because you'll bloom. You'll lose your Quicken aura and your Dendro app, and you're just gonna be electrocharging. If you're playing her in Quicken, generally she's kind of just better because she's got that healing that's added because it lasts long enough for Cyno to do all he wants to do. Bit of a weird question, but can Cyno mimic what Raiden can do in Sunfire Overvape? Yes, but no. Because the thing about Sunfire Overvape is you're playing a team with 4 different elements. Raiden's energy restoration matters a ton. Cyno doesn't have that energy restoration. You're gonna need so much ER on your gene. Is it ever viable to slot in an off-field pyro unit like Toma in the Cyno team? It can be. You can play Burning Load. So if your electro application is really fast, when you apply pyro, you're basically gonna wipe it away pretty quickly with your electro, meaning that you'll get overloads and you're not gonna lose too much quicken. You little shit. You know, it works, but it's just... The person was, like, trying to use Toma to help maintain quicken uptime with this team. I get what they're trying to do, it's just, okay, you're managing to maintain quicken uptime a little bit, and it's costing you some Hyperbloom seeds, and a whole ass team slot that could be spent on a unit that actually does something, you know? Shit, he died. It works, but if we were to use Xingqiu instead, it would be a lot faster and a lot better, and yeah. It functions, but it's not like Toma's doing anything, right? Like, Zhongli wouldn't do much less. Okay, I just suck. Whatever, man. You get the idea, though, right? Like, it's quite a bit faster if you're just using someone other than Toma. Toma's not the reason it's doing good. And you still have the problem that, like, you're running solo Electro Cyno, right? Like, this is not sustainable. I need Fav for it to even function. Like, does it work? Yeah. Is it ideal? No. Wait, is it ever viable to slot in an off-field pyro unit like Toma? Yes. Is it generally that great? Meh. But it works. And really, that's all that matters. Would I say he's versatile? No, I would not. He can work in a few different teams, but the teams have the same kind of issues, so he's not that versatile. I think he was largely underestimated when he was released. I don't think so. I think he was very fairly estimated. Assuming her interruption resistance is good enough, would Dehya be of any use in a Cyno team? No, she wouldn't. Technically, you could kind of make use of her, but because her interruption resistance only lasts for like 9 seconds, just use Toma instead. Is Keqing or Cyno a better battery for Beidou and Aggravate? Keqing, and it's not even close. Keqing is just so much more energy, especially because she can actually use E whenever it's up, whereas Cyno can't. Yeah, apparently they fixed her C2 now, and because she's standard, some people might actually have C2, so. Thoughts on Cyno Taser, and is it cope? It is cope, yes, but it works. Cynational, no, yes. Again, it works. You shouldn't play it, but like it works. So if you want to play it, like go ahead. I'm not going to stop you. How much would I change about his kit if I could? Honestly, I think the only thing about his kit that actually bothers me is that if you use your E during your burst and then your burst expires, your E cooldown just gets increased. It's dumb. It's so stupid. Why? I get it, like, it makes sense, I understand it, but it's just one of those things that, like, I don't care that I understand it, it's still frustrating. Same reason why it's frustrating when cooldowns don't reset in Abyss. It's dumb, I hate it. Wait, did they change it? Maybe it's only if you swap out. Okay, yeah, there you go. It's if you swap out. It's dumb. My cooldown went from 2 seconds to 5 seconds because I swapped out. But like, why? Why is that a thing? That is the thing I would change if I could. How much do I like him, since I don't seem to be using him much lately, and do I still find him fun, if at all? Honestly, I'm grateful to Cyno because Cyno has made me realize that Keqing is actually really fun. I was really excited about a TF carry, and then I started playing him, and honestly, he wasn't that fun to play, and I started really disliking his character after the quest. So I kind of just realized, wait, Keqing is also a TF carry now. So that's gonna do it for the Cyno Asks Zajef. I'm sorry that I'm not going into as much depth as I usually do. Like I said, I'm really sick. I just want to try to get this out. But yeah, so thank you all for dropping by. I appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed your stay, learned a thing or two. See you guys around. Bye, YouTube. And yeah, I'm not gonna do the voice lines. I'm sorry. I'm too sick for that.
Guilty! Your penance is due! Surrender! Futile!
Maybe in Japanese.
Saiko Tatsu!
Not the right day for this. I'm sorry, chat. I did my best.